friends, welcome to my channel 5 Minutes History. In this video, let's check out the brief history of civil war in Sudan, the third largest country in Africa. On 15th April 2023, Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, and multiple other cities across the country were engulfed by open warfare. For months, tensions had been building between Sudan's army, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the de facto leader of Sudan, and the paramilitary unit called Rapid Support Forces or RSF, led by Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo. The conflict erupted exactly 4 years after a colossal revolution succeeded against all odds in removing President Omar al-Bashir after almost 30 years of dictatorship, economic pillage, and genocide, and in doing so created a power vacuum over which the two forces are now fighting. For centuries, the ethnic Africans of southern Sudan have been at odds with the ethnic Arabs in the north. After the fall of the Christian kingdoms of Nubia in the 16th century, the Arabs and Ottomans began raiding southern Sudan in search of slaves. In 19th century, after slavery was suppressed by colonial powers, the largely Christian South Sudanese were still victims to increased slave raids by their more powerful northern Arab neighbors. In 1956, the British, without consulting the South and with pressure from the Muslim North, not only merged these two ancient enemies into one political entity, but also handed most of its power to the northern Arab Muslims. Lack of political representation and fears of suppression forced the South to demand more autonomy, and this led to a long period of civil war in Sudan, with southern guerrilla groups fighting government forces. In 1971, their leader Joseph Lagu created the South Sudan Liberation Movement or SSLM and negotiated peace with the Sudanese government. The North agreed to give South some regional autonomy and promised to integrate the SSLM soldiers into the Sudanese army. But this peace was temporary, as radical Muslims in the government despised the independence granted to the non-Muslim South. In early 1980s, oil was discovered in Sudan and led to renewed tensions between North and South. President Jafar Muhammad Nimeri, a fundamentalist Arab, broke the peace agreement with the South and attempted to take control of the newly found oil fields. He also declared Sudan an Islamic nation and imposed Sharia law on the South. In response, the southern leader John Garang established the Sudan People's Liberation Army or SPLA in 1983 to fight the Arab atrocities and led to the beginning of the Second Sudanese Civil War. An estimated 2 million people died during this war that involved systematic massacres, rapes, abduction, and slavery. Those suspected of disloyalty were tortured and murdered by both sides. Armies from both sides even enlisted thousands of child soldiers in their ranks. The Second Sudanese Civil War lasted for 22 years from 1983 to 2005 and ultimately resulted in the independence of South Sudan in 2011. But this was no end to Sudan's miseries. In 2003, during the last years of Second Sudanese Civil War, marginalized non-Arab population of Darfur in Western Sudan rose in rebellion against the majority Muslim Sudan government. The rebellion was brutally suppressed by Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir with the help of the Arab militia called janjaweed. This resulted in the ethnic cleansing of the Darfur's non-Arabs, and Bashir was indicted by International Criminal Court for genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. This genocide drew international scrutiny and sanctions, but nothing changed within Sudan. The Janjaweed militia later formalized into a paramilitary unit within the Sudan government called the Rapid Support Forces or RSF. The RSF grew more and more powerful under its commander Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo, who was given free rein to accumulate influence and assets by the Bashir government. But as Dagalo's influence in the government increased, his RSF together with the army pushed aside Bashir in a coup in 2019, ending his 3 decades of rule. The Sudan army established a transitional military council, a junta, and began ruling with iron fist. As protests calling for civilian rule continued, the RSF perpetrated the Khartoum massacre in June 2019, in which more than 100 demonstrators were killed. In August 2019, after international pressure and mediation by the African Union, the military agreed to share power in an interim joint civilian military government headed by a civilian prime minister, Abdel Hamdok, with elections to take place in 2023. But before any transition to democracy could take place, the military again seized power in a coup led by Sudanese armed forces leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and RSF leader Dagalo in October 2021. The military later agreed to hand over the authority to a civilian-led government, but it was delayed again due to renewed tensions between the generals al-Burhan and Dagalo, who serve as the chairman and deputy chairman of the Transitional Council. Chief among their political disputes is the integration of the RSF into the military. The RSF insisted on a 10-year timeline for its integration into the army, while the army demanded integration within 2 years. There is also the dispute regarding the status given to RSF officers in the future hierarchy and whether RSF forces should be under the command of the army chief rather than Sudan's commander-in-chief, who is currently al-Burhan. Tensions between the RSF and the Sudanese military began to escalate in February 2023 as the RSF began to recruit members from across Sudan. On 11th April, RSF deployed its forces near the city of Khartoum and Merowe. When government forces ordered them to leave, they refused, and this led to clashes between the two. Since 15th April 2023, Sudan's capital Khartoum has become a war zone, with surreal scenes of tanks, missile strikes, and plumes of smoke rising throughout the city, and foreign governments rushing to evacuate their citizens out of the country.